Have you ever been mesmerized by her? That woman who seemed to embody everything you've been searching for: intelligence, beauty, warmth, understanding, a perfect reflection of your deepest desires. You feel you finally found her, the one who completes you, who makes everything in your life make sense. But then, something shifts. A cold glance when she thinks you're not looking, a cutting remark that seems to come from nowhere, an emotional withdrawal that leaves you confused and desperate to understand what happened. That perfect image begins to crack, revealing something darker beneath the surface. What you're experiencing isn't just relationship trouble. It's an encounter with what Carl Jung would call the shadow side of the feminine. This shadow exists in every woman you'll ever meet, operating below the conscious level, pulling strings you cannot see and she may not even recognize. It's the reason why relationships that seem perfect suddenly collapse. It's why you find yourself caught in the same emotional traps again and again, with different women who somehow trigger the same pain. Today, you're about to discover the hidden archetypal forces that silently drive women's deepest emotional behaviors. Forces that Jung spent decades mapping in the human psyche. Understanding these forces won't just explain her bewildering behaviors. It will transform how you approach every relationship in your life. The pain of confusion, betrayal, and emotional whiplash you've experienced isn't something you have to keep reliving. The solution lies in understanding what Jung revealed about the feminine shadow, not to manipulate or control, but to finally see clearly what's really happening beneath the surface of your interactions. Are you ready to pull back the veil? To understand the shadow side of the feminine, you first need to grasp Jung's fundamental insight. The human psyche is not just what we consciously know about ourselves. It's a vast territory, most of which remains hidden in the unconscious. A realm of powerful energies, ancient patterns, and primal forces that shape our behavior without our awareness. Within this unconscious territory live what Jung called archetypes, universal patterns or templates that organize our psychological experiences. They're like the operating system of the human mind, running silently in the background, but determining how we process and respond to life. When it comes to women, Jung identified several core feminine archetypes that exist within every woman's psyche. You've encountered them all, though you may not have recognized them by name. The Great Mother archetype embodies nurturing, protection, and unconditional love. She's the woman who makes you feel safe, cared for, and accepted exactly as you are. When this archetype is active in a healthy way, you experience a woman's capacity for emotional support, compassion, and life-giving energy. The Queen or Wise Woman represents mature feminine wisdom, dignity, and authority. She's the woman whose judgment you trust implicitly, whose perspective seems to cut through confusion to the heart of matters. In her presence, you feel a sense of order and clear boundaries. The Maiden carries the energy of innocence, new beginnings, and openness to experience. She's playful, spontaneous, and brings freshness to life. When you encounter this archetype, you feel a sense of possibility and renewal. But here's where things get interesting and challenging. Each of these archetypes has a shadow side, a distorted or negative expression that emerges when that energy is repressed, wounded, or operating unconsciously. The shadow side of the Great Mother becomes the devouring mother, possessive, engulfing, and emotionally suffocating. This is the woman who seems to care for you but actually undermines your independence. She creates emotional dependency through subtle manipulation, making you feel that without her, you would be lost. She might shower you with attention and care one moment, then withdraw it the next, creating an addictive cycle of emotional reward and punishment. Have you ever found yourself constantly seeking a woman's approval, feeling anxious when she's upset, or walking on eggshells to avoid her disappointment? You might be caught in the grip of the devouring mother archetype. The Shadow Queen becomes the cold queen or terrible mother, critical, withholding, and emotionally absent. This is the woman who seems to judge you constantly and find you wanting. She creates a sense that you're never quite good enough, that you must continually prove your worth. Her withdrawal of approval feels like emotional death, driving you to desperate attempts to win back her favor. The shadow maiden transforms into what Jung might recognize as aspects of Lilith or the dark feminine, seductive, destructive, and chaotic. This energy uses sexual power as a weapon, builds up fantasies only to shatter them, and creates emotional storms that leave you disoriented. She might appear as the woman who seems perfectly attuned to your desires, only to suddenly become cold or cruel, leaving you bewildered by the shift. What's crucial to understand is that these shadow expressions aren't conscious strategies. The woman in your life isn't deliberately plotting to manipulate or hurt you. These are unconscious patterns, often triggered by her own unhealed wounds and unacknowledged fears. When a woman hasn't recognized and integrated her own shadow side, that energy doesn't disappear. It operates autonomously, emerging in moments of stress, vulnerability, or threat. The perfect partner you thought you knew suddenly becomes someone else entirely, leaving you wondering what you did wrong. This unconscious shadow manifests in several recognizable patterns in relationships. Silent emotional manipulation, where your emotions are subtly directed through approval and disapproval, creating an invisible leash that keeps you constantly oriented toward her emotional state. Affective control, where her moods determine the emotional weather of your relationship, and you find yourself becoming hypervigilant to changes in her expressions, tone, or behavior. Destructive ruptures, where seemingly minor disagreements escalate into relationship-threatening conflicts that seem disproportionate to the triggering event. You've likely experienced these patterns and wondered why they keep repeating across different relationships. The answer lies in understanding both her shadow and, critically, your own unconscious responses to it. Because the truth Jung discovered, which we'll explore more deeply, is that what draws you to her shadow is often your own unacknowledged shadow, creating a powerful but potentially destructive dance of unconscious forces. Now we come to the pivotal moment, the shattering of the fantasy. That instant when you suddenly perceive that behind her perfection lies an unconscious dynamic of power, manipulation, or emotional withdrawal. This moment of recognition can feel devastating, as if the ground beneath your feet has disappeared. Let me describe this moment as it often unfolds. You're in a conversation or conflict with her, one that feels strangely familiar despite the specific details being different. Something about her response, perhaps a particular look in her eyes, a tone of voice, or a phrase she uses, suddenly triggers a profound realization. It's as if a veil is lifted, and you see clearly for the first time a pattern that has been operating all along. You realize that her seemingly caring actions have actually been keeping you dependent, or that her emotional withdrawal isn't about needing space. It's a form of punishment and control. Or that her apparent perfection was a carefully constructed facade that allowed her to maintain power while avoiding authentic vulnerability. This is your encounter with her shadow in its full force. The devouring mother who needs you to remain childlike and dependent. The cold queen who requires your constant striving for approval. Or the dark feminine who uses chaos and seduction to maintain dominance. What makes this moment so shocking is that you're not just seeing her shadow, you're confronting your own. Because the truth Jung revealed is that we are drawn to others' shadows precisely because they activate our own unintegrated aspects. If you're repeatedly attracted to women who eventually become controlling or emotionally manipulative, you must ask yourself, what part of me is drawn to that dynamic? What wounded aspect of my masculine self seeks out that particular feminine shadow? This is the profound psychological truth Jung discovered. The shadow does not operate randomly. It emerges specifically to protect what we most fear losing or facing. Her control might protect her fear of abandonment. Her emotional withdrawal might shield her from the vulnerability of authentic intimacy. Her chaos might defend against her fear of being ordinary or invisible. And your attraction to these patterns protects your own fears, perhaps of taking full responsibility for your life, of facing your own emotional depths, or of developing a masculine identity that isn't defined by feminine approval. This moment of recognition is both crisis and opportunity. It's the death of the fantasy relationship, but it can be the birth of something far more profound. If you have the courage to use this revelation, not as a reason to blame her, but as a mirror for your own necessary growth. Because the shadow, Jung taught us, isn't something to be defeated or escaped. It's something to be integrated, both hers and yours. And that integration begins with the willingness to see clearly what has been hidden. The teaching that emerges from this exploration couldn't be clearer. Male introspection must venture into these shadow territories as well. It's not enough to recognize the shadow side of the feminine. You must acknowledge and integrate your own shadow aspects too. Only through this mutual recognition and integration can you build relationships based on authenticity rather than unconscious projection, on mutual respect rather than power dynamics, on emotional maturity rather than childish patterns of need and control. Jung called this process of shadow integration individuation, becoming the individual you truly are, distinct from collective patterns and unconscious drives. For you as a man seeking deeper understanding of relationships with women, individuation involves several crucial steps. First, recognize your anima, Jung's term for the feminine aspect within the male psyche. Every man carries an internal image of the feminine, shaped by his mother, female relatives, cultural images, and early experiences with women. When unconscious, this anima gets projected onto real women, creating impossible expectations and inevitable disappointment. By becoming conscious of your anima, you can distinguish between the actual woman before you and your projected ideal. Second, project less, observe more. When you find yourself intensely attracted to or repelled by a woman, pause and ask, am I responding to her or to something she represents in my unconscious? This simple practice of consciousness can break the spell of projection. Third, separate your authentic desire from fantasy. Sexual and romantic attraction isn't the problem. It's when these natural drives become entangled with unconscious needs for mothering, approval, or rescue that relationships become distorted. Fourth, develop resistance to unconscious manipulation. By recognizing the patterns we've discussed, the devouring mother's engulfment, the cold queen's withholding, the dark feminine's chaos, you can respond consciously rather than reacting from your own wounds. Finally, and most importantly, mirror your own shadow. When a woman's behavior triggers intense emotion in you, look inward. The qualities that most disturb you in her are often disowned aspects of your self-seeking recognition and integration. Jung showed us that growth only comes from within. What you perceive in her often reflects what you haven't yet been willing to see in yourself. Her control might mirror your own manipulative tendencies. Her emotional withdrawal might reflect your own fear of vulnerability. Her chaos might echo your own repressed wildness. Use these insights not as weapons against women, but as tools for your own transformation. The journey Jung mapped isn't about changing her, it's about transforming yourself. This inner work is the true liberation. When you undertake this journey of integrating your shadow and relating to women from consciousness rather than unconscious projection, you'll find that the quality of your relationships transforms. You'll be attracted to women who have done their own shadow work. You'll recognize unhealthy patterns earlier. You'll communicate from authenticity rather than manipulation. And most powerfully, you'll discover that the perfection you once sought in her was always a distorted reflection of your own potential for wholeness. How has this exploration changed your understanding of your past or current relationships? What shadow patterns do you recognize in your interactions with women? Share your personal experiences in the comments below. Your vulnerability might be exactly what another man needs to recognize his own patterns. If this perspective has given you a new lens to understand your relationships, hit the like button to help others find this vital knowledge. Subscribe to continue this journey of psychological exploration with us. And don't miss our previous videos on masculine archetypes and the hero's journey, which complement today's exploration. Remember, in Jung's view, the encounter with the shadow isn't a curse. It's the beginning of genuine psychological and spiritual growth. The darkness you've experienced in relationships isn't meaningless suffering. It's an invitation to a deeper, more authentic way of being. The choice now is yours. Will you continue to be captivated by the perfect image, only to be devastated when the shadow inevitably emerges? Or will you embrace the whole truth of feminine and masculine psychology, with all its light and darkness, and build relationships based on integration rather than illusion? The path of consciousness awaits your decision.